What are you willing to do to succeed at trading? That's a big question. What would your answer be? If you're like many traders, you might say something like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. So then I'd ask the follow-up question. Well, what are you doing to succeed at trading? And you might say, I'm doing everything I can. Now, those sound like the right answers, full of drive and determination, but how true are they, really? What does your schedule look like? Maybe you work a 9 to 5 and come home tired each evening, but no matter how exhausted you are, you open your charts and get stuck into your trading. Now, the effort you're putting in might make it feel like you're doing the necessary work to succeed. But then a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, you reflect on your progress and think to yourself, I should be closer to my goals by now. Because here's the thing, the issue is what you're spending your time doing. But once you realize what you should be doing and you make those changes, I can almost guarantee that you will reach new levels with your trading. So in this video, I'm going to start by breaking down the problem, then we're going to solve that for you by going through a 4-step practical exercise, and this will give you more clarity over what you should be doing and help you to start making more meaningful progress with your trading. If we really boil things down to the basics, succeeding at anything comes down to a simple recipe of 3 things: doing the right things, consistency, and time. Meaning, if you do the right things consistently and for a long enough period of time, most things become achievable. The problem is, most people assess their progress based on the third aspect, time, and ignore the other 2. So you see comments from people all the time saying things like, I've been trading for 5 years and I'm still not consistently profitable, it's impossible. Well, I've been playing guitar since 1996 and I'm still not Tim Henson. But let me explain why, and it's not necessarily about talent. There's a great movie that came out this year called A Million Miles Away. It's about Jose Hernandez, the son of migrant farm workers, and through sheer grit and determination, he managed to become a NASA astronaut. It's definitely worth watching the film. Now, there's a scene in the movie where his teacher has a meeting with his parents and she's telling them that they're damaging his education by traveling all the time. She says, what would happen if you had a tree, planted it, watered it, cared for it, but then dug it up and replanted it every year again and again? How would that tree grow? Let's think of it a slightly different way. Imagine you go to the gym every day for a month and you work really hard. You do progressive overload with your weight training, you hit your macros, you start making great progress. Then you get a girlfriend, you go on holiday, work gets busy, basically other things become the priority. So you stop going to the gym for a few months, you have the occasional session here and there, but nothing consistent. But then one day you realize that you've maybe had one kebab too many and it's time to get serious about the gym again. What happens when you go back? Do you just pick up where you left off? So let's say someone goes through that same cycle for 5 years. Would it be fair for them to then say, well, I've been going to the gym for 5 years and I still look like shit. It's a waste of time. No? Well, that's what people do with their trading. They focus on it for a while and they're really enthusiastic. Then it starts losing their appeal. They get shiny object syndrome, move on to the next money-making scheme. They realize they'd rather play games or watch Netflix after work. They just don't push themselves enough to make any real progress with their trading. Then one day, out of the blue, something happens that causes them to reflect on their situation and they feel fed up. They decide it's time to refocus on their trading. But since they haven't been focusing on their development for such a long time, they've actually regressed. They've experienced something known as skill decay. So without being consistent with your trading development, you'll just go through that same cycle time and time again and then wonder why after so many years, the only thing you've actually gained is a grudge. Consistency is everything. If you're consistent for enough time, you will succeed. That is, as long as you're doing the right things. And if you want to know what I think the right things are, check out the free training that's linked in the description box. I go into much more detail there rather than this video spiraling out of control. But let's assume that you've found a proven, meaningful trading method that you're learning. Well, most traders do truly know what they should be focusing on if they want to improve. You might like to believe that you're stuck and you don't know what to work on, but deep down, you do know. The problem is, you don't want to be doing those things, so you convince yourself that other things are more important. Most traders would rather spend their time looking for trades in the live markets because it's more exciting, or doing other tasks that are within their comfort zone because it feels good and doesn't take much effort. But in reality, if you want meaningful progress, it will come from one of these things. If you're a complete beginner, you should be studying the concepts, techniques, and theories. There's no point focusing on the live markets if you're still learning because you don't know what's what. And then once you're beyond that stage, the progress will come from purposeful practice sessions, working on a consistent system, so putting that together, or going through an optimization process to find improvements. And those are the things that you should be working on. And that final point doesn't mean watching YouTube videos to see what new thing you can add to your trading approach. It means digging into your trading data and journal entries to find where there are potential tweaks or areas of improvement. Of course, these things should be done alongside actual trading time as well. There's nothing that can replace that. But for most traders, the progress won't come from racking up endless hours of chart time. Instead, the progress comes from those things I just outlined. Chart time is mostly ordinary practice. It's the equivalent of driving a taxi for 8 hours a day and thinking you're developing the skills to the level of Max Verstappen. It's just not going to happen. But you know, all of those things take time, effort, and hard work. They're not necessarily enjoyable to go through. They're likely out of your comfort zone and you have to push yourself. And there is another reason that you're not willing to do that. It's an even bigger problem that stops you from doing the right things and stops you from being consistent. The problem is that trading is not your priority. Sure, you might say it is, but your actions speak louder than words. And if you know that trading isn't your priority, that's okay as well, but it just means you have to change your expectations about what sort of progress you're going to make. But if you're not willing to do that, here's what we can do instead. I'm going to walk you through a 4-step process, and I want you to grab a pen and paper and commit to doing this properly. And you have to be completely honest with yourself with each step, otherwise the whole thing will be meaningless. And by the end, you'll see where you're falling short, what you need to do to correct that, and what you're actually willing or able to do. So let's go. Imagine a world-class training academy, like the ones at top Premier League teams, where young people join the academy and their life becomes completely devoted to becoming a great footballer. Imagine what their week looks like. Every minute of their day is focused on their development, even down to how they sleep, what they eat, and other wellness practices. They have specific sessions focused on different areas of their performance, video footage for positional play, data analysts looking at performance metrics, on-field training for individual skills, scenario-based training games, strength training, PR training, and of course, competitive matches. Their entire schedule is focused on one thing: becoming the best footballer they can be. Now, instead of football, imagine that you were at a top-level performance institute for becoming a world-class trader. What would an equivalent schedule look like? What specific sessions would be involved? What other things would you be focusing on? Sleep, nutrition, psychology? How would your schedule be structured to develop you into the greatest trader you could possibly be? I want you to write a list of all of those things. And remember, this isn't writing a list of what a great trader is doing in their week. It's a list of what someone developing into a great trader at your current stage would be doing. And I want to clarify something here. I'm not saying to look at someone like Paul Tudor-Jones and break down the development process they went through. I'm saying if you were in a perfect, dedicated training academy and your life was devoted to developing your trading and you had no constraints in terms of time, money, or resources, what would be involved? Really go to town on the list and think about all aspects. If you're not sure about something, either research it or make an educated guess. Like for example, if you know nothing about how to optimize your sleep, just note down that you'd be optimizing your sleep. And what you should end up with, if you've done this correctly, is a list of the ideal and most professional ways to develop your skill at the stage you're at now to the best of your knowledge. Now I want you to get a separate sheet of paper and write down a list of what you're actually doing right now to develop your trading. How's your week currently structured? Be brutally honest, don't try and sugarcoat it to make yourself feel better about what you're doing or not doing, and try not to write down what you're supposed to be doing or what you aspire to do. It has to be what you're actually genuinely doing each day, week, or month. And these should be things that you're doing consistently, not just a one-off thing. Don't be the equivalent of someone who hits the treadmill once a month and claims that they're running regularly. This is all for your benefit, so it needs to be honest. Now, I think it goes without saying that anyone who does this process is going to find that the first list is longer than the second list. No one is doing absolutely everything. It's just not realistic. And that's fine. But just by going through this process, it will already open your eyes to how little you're probably doing for your development. Most people will just have a few things listed down from the second step. They'll be analysing the live markets, checking the news or economic calendar, taking trades and then writing them up in their trading journal over and over again. And if that is the case for you, then it should be clear now that if your priority is to develop into a great trader, you're not doing everything you can. If you were able to do everything in the first list, you'd be flying. But instead, you're stuck in one place, spinning your wheels. It's productive procrastination. You're taking action, but not the actions that need to be done. Achieving high performance in anything takes a huge amount of sacrifice. That's why truly world-class performers are few and far between, because it takes an extreme amount of dedication. Now, unfortunately, this level of commitment isn't feasible for most people for many reasons. And that's why in this step, you're going to get really honest and realistic with yourself. Compare the list from step 1 to the one from step 2 and see what's missing. Of course, some things won't be as important as others, so you might choose to disregard them. It might be that the benefit just isn't worth the time or effort involved, it's not practical. But what you should do is start putting together a new weekly structure that includes more of the elements from step 1 that you're not currently doing. A plan that you know if you stuck with it religiously, it's inevitable that you would make good progress. That's the foundation of a great plan, where the outcome, if you follow it, is more certain. Now, once you have that structure, you need to assess it and think, what would it take to make this a reality? More specifically, you need to think about what sacrifices you'd need to make to achieve it. Maybe it's going to take more time and energy than what you're currently putting in for your trading. So where's that going to come from? What would you need to sacrifice to accommodate that? You know, it might mean that there's less time in the evenings or at weekends for Netflix or gaming, maybe less social time, less time with your family. Maybe you'd have to sacrifice some of your freedom and flexibility. Perhaps in some cases, it's that your current job or your studies are the obstacle. Take note of all of these things. Then it's time to decide which sacrifices you're prepared to make or which ones you can make. And you have to be, again, really honest with yourself here. There's no point saying, yes, I'm willing to make all those sacrifices, because it's likely that you're only feeling that way because you're feeling this buzz from having a sense of clarity, and because it's easier to say that now until you're faced with the reality of actually having to do it. So go through it and consider firstly which sacrifices you're able to make, and then secondly, which ones you're genuinely willing and comfortable with making. We're not talking about doing this for a few weeks, we're talking about long term. So unless you're really comfortable with the choices you're making, you're not going to stick with it anyway. Like for example, if you have a 9-to-5 job and you need it because you need the income, you obviously can't sacrifice that. But if you're genuinely willing to do whatever it takes to succeed with your trading and you can make adjustments, maybe you can switch to part-time and still make things work out for you. Maybe you need to cut your costs a bit, but it works out. It might sound crazy and unrealistic, but that's exactly what one of our members did, who's now making a lot of money each year from their funded accounts. So I'm not saying everyone should do this. I'm not encouraging you to quit your job. I'm just saying that there are probably adjustments that you can make to make things work out better. But the problem for most people is that there are so many things they want to do and they want to achieve, so they end up trying to do all of them and balance all of them somehow, like loads of spinning plates. But as a result, they don't succeed at any of them. There's a phrase that I always remind myself of. You can have anything you want in life, but not everything. You have to make sacrifices. You know, here's something that's really interesting to think about. So let's say there's someone you've never met before and they're going to follow you around for a whole month watching the things that you do, and then they're going to objectively audit how you spend your time. They know nothing about you, they don't get to know you, they're just basing it on the actions that you take. What do you think that they would say is your top priority? Let me know in the comments, it'll be interesting to find out. And actually that'll be quite a good service for a lot of people, maybe a bit intrusive. But does that answer that you gave for that, what someone else would say about your priority, does that align with what your priority actually is or what you think your priority should be? And unfortunately, this also applies for things like leisure time, social time, friends and family. I'm not saying you have to cut those things out or even cut them down if you don't want to. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's something you do need to consider, especially if you're not progressing with your trading and it truly is your priority. So what you'll maybe realize is that actually trading isn't your priority. Maybe something else is your priority instead, and maybe it's actually the case that trading is quite far down your list of important things. And again, that's absolutely fine, but it just means you have to be realistic about what you're likely to achieve and how quickly you're going to progress. You know, someone asked me the other day about my work-life balance, and the truth is, I don't have any balance. Since my early 20s, I've devoted pretty much all my time to trading and other work, My girlfriend and my family used to hate it, but now they've just got used to it. And some of you will think it's completely sad to live that way. Like, how are you wasting your life doing that? Sounds like it's toxic hustle culture. But honestly, I love it, and everyone's different. That's what I want to do. Maybe you want to do something a different way. But I think of it in terms of seasons. Like right now and in my 20s, I've been focused on achieving my work-related goals. And by doing that, I'm able to create a situation where the next season of my life can be more focused to family and enjoying myself without needing to do anything else, because I've already created that situation from the sacrifices I made earlier. And that's the option I prefer, rather than spending my whole life trying to balance everything and never feeling like I have enough time for anything. Instead, I can segment it and spend more time working then and more time enjoying myself after. But anyway, if we bring all of this back to the practical steps, by the end of step 3, you should end up with a final list of what you're really willing to do to succeed at trading. So instead of it being, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, which is not true, you now have something more realistic. So the next step is to make it all practical. It's one thing to say what you're willing to do and a whole other thing to actually do it. So now you need to put together an action plan of how it's all going to happen. The most important thing to remember for this step is that the best plans are the ones that we can stick to consistently. That means they need to be sustainable. The most draining schedule in the world might seem like you'll get lots done in a short space of time, but you'll either give up or burn yourself out long before you ever reach your goal. You'll end up being like the tree that starts growing but then gets ripped out and replanted, and that's not what we want. So the most important thing is to break down the activities into the most bite-sized, easy to achieve tasks. For example, if it's an optimization process, don't just block time for optimization, instead break it down into the individual little tasks that make up that process and then assign time for those. This is important for 2 reasons. Firstly, when a task isn't broken down, it can seem like a mountain to climb and our brain will find ways to avoid it, so we end up procrastinating. And the second reason relates to the planning fallacy. Studies found that people are over-optimistic about what could be achieved within a certain amount of time, how long it takes to complete something, and so on. So when you break these big tasks down into smaller subtasks, your estimates become a lot more accurate. So if you're going through practice sessions, for example, rather than saying I'm practicing my technical analysis, break it down to the sort of sub-skills that make up that and focus your practice sessions on that, which is a good thing for purposeful practice anyway. It's one of the essential criteria. And remember, when you're creating this plan, I know it's probably obvious to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, you have to keep in mind any other priority or responsibilities that take up time in your schedule, especially if they have a fixed time slot. Like for example, if you have a 9-to-5 job that you need to keep, or if you have kids that you're not able to put up for adoption, just kidding, then you need to have time set aside in your schedule for that. And then all that's really left to do is the hard part, which is following through with the plan. This part is entirely up to you and how much you genuinely want to achieve your trading goals. So if you're serious about this, clear the distractions and truly focus on each task at hand. And don't forget, this structure is only going to be for the development stage of your trading, so how well you commit to this plan and how much you actually follow through and take the actions will dictate how long you have to spend doing it. It might be that after 6 months you're ready to focus purely on trading performance rather than development. Maybe it's after a year, who knows? But the more you commit and give the structure your full effort, the sooner it will be. Now, whether you put this plan into action or not, and whether you believe in the approach or not, there's still something to gain here. Just by going through this exercise, it can be really eye-opening. By completing these steps, you'll have a much better idea of where you're falling short. And when you reflect on why that is, you may realize that achieving your trading goal isn't as important to you as you first thought. On the other hand, if you find that it is, you'll now know exactly what you need to do to make it happen. And if you want to know specifically what sort of practice sessions you should focus on, check out the 2 videos that you can see on screen where I break it down in more detail. This has been a long video, so thanks for making it this far. And if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button and comment below letting me know which part was most insightful for you. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.